We will ask the candidate to provide brief opening remarks, approximately 4 to 5 minutes or so. Then, as I mentioned, we have just 4 very general questions that ask the finalists to cover some important territory and will help kind of facilitate our session. And then we'll ask our questions from the audience. There are microphones set up in the room. After the initial questions, that is the initial 4 questions, have been asked, I would ask that you line up, if you will, just to facilitate time behind the mic to ask your question. And I would welcome you to start by sharing your name and your role with the college or district or in the community. I'm going to have to also ask that questions be limited to about 30 seconds, which sounds short, but is longer than you think it is. And this will allow you to ask your question and the finalist, in this case, Dr. Avery, to really spend the bulk of the time answering the question. So just a few minutes before the end of the session, we'll be asking Dr. Avery to provide brief closing remarks, and that's a kind of general sense of where we'll be going. So a couple of other pieces of business. When you entered the room, you probably, I hope, got a public comment form. This is one way to leave your comments and your thoughts with the district. And there's also another way, which is if you go online, you will find, and actually there are instructions on the form for how to do this. You'll find that you can go to the website for the district, and there are instructions right there for filling out an online form. I think you know probably that you can also watch the forums on video, and those, as I understand it, will be up on Friday. But very, very good to see people here in person for this very important opportunity. Your comments will be shared with the interim chancellor and the board. And thanks all for being here, and let's get started. So our first candidate is Dr. Avery, and it's our very, very great pleasure to welcome Dr. Avery to Chabot College. And let's give her a warm Chabot College welcome.
Okay, can you hear me in back? And hopefully they will also be able to pick me up on the videotaped form as well. So again, my name is Lisa Avery. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my background, why I'm here, and what I hope and what I wish. I would first, if you would not mind indulging me, I would love to see a little bit more about who you are. So if you could just, for a show of hands, how many faculty do we have here today? Okay, thank you for taking time during a busy, busy part of the of the semester. Sorry, I have to make my adjustment back to semesters after a couple of decades on quarters. How many classified staff do we have with us? Admin and other support staff that don't fit in one of those categories. How many students? Okay, I told our student he gets to ask all of the tough questions, and so we'll let him skip to the front of the line. Any other category I missed? Board members? I don't think we have. I'll be seeing the board members next week. Well, thank you. Thank you for hosting me for 2 straight days of sunshine. I have to fly back to Portland tonight, and it will be hard to fly back to that rain. After the great weather I've been treated to here, I have meetings in our State House with legislators set up about our budget request tomorrow morning. So I will be making a rainy landing tonight back to the other parts of the Northwest. It is great to be here at Chabot. I want to briefly just tell you a little bit about my background. I know that you've seen probably copies of the bio. I started as a faculty member in my career in higher ed and teaching teaching and learning frames the center and the heart of all of my decisions. So I feel like, and you can probably tell I'm so glad to have the microphone back, glad to be in a room with students. I really feel like I'm still an educator and still a teacher, and that is what I think grounds my perspective, as does equity. I'm a first-gen college student, grew up LGBT in Indiana in the 80s. Anybody remember the 80s? Anybody been to Indiana? Yes. I mean, it's great to be here out west. Let's just leave it at that. It's a good place to be from. My role currently, and actually there's a lot of synergy between what I've done in my higher ed administrative career and this chancellor job, because I was first in community college education in Washington State, which has a bond program. It has what I understand is a bit of a controversial topic here in California currently among the community colleges, which is performance-based funding. So I have been speaking some of those same acronyms for many years and came into higher ed really with that as the reality already in Washington, at least for the community college system. Interestingly, and I hope we get a chance to talk about this, I don't know exactly what your governor has planned here. I've read lots and lots about it, but in Washington, they took our money away from our base budget and doled it out back to us in increments based on metrics that the state had established. And I think there's some similarity to that, how it's going to be rolled out in California as well. So I think I speak budget, and I know about performance-based funding. Currently, as campus president at Portland Community College, I oversee a $94 million budget with about 1,200 faculty and staff, 27,000 students, and it's part of a district. And so each of my positions in community college has involved a district as well. So that's another overlap between Chabot, Las Positas, Washington, Oregon, and my background. Excellence in teaching and equity are really my favorite topics. It's what I like to engage with faculty on, to talk about with staff, and to make sure that we are doing to help guarantee that students have a successful outcome. My personal mission, and I'll wrap after this, my personal mission is to reduce poverty and eliminate the gaps that exist for students between what's affordable and what they can pay, and those equity gaps too in our income. So I've been talking a lot lately with our faculty and staff leadership about not just completion, but wages. Making sure that when we send students out to the job market, that they are as much as possible getting high wages, family level wages. And Oregon, particularly Portland, just like this part of California, is very, very expensive now. So that's something students are having to ask about too. Lastly, I think, if I'm correct, I don't know about this building, am I sharing the same stage as Tom Hanks was on? Awesome. That must draw some, that's a good donor opportunity, I would assume. I doubt I will be as successful commercially as he was, but yeah, I know that you have a famous alum here at Chabot. So that aside, let me wrap up my remarks and just turn it over to questions, because I really did want to make sure we had time for a dialogue. Does anybody want to join us first? Or you have some first, right?
So I think you've already told us something about this, but please share, if you would, why you think you should be the next chancellor of Chabot Las Positas Community College District.
Thank you for that question. And again, hopefully I won't do too much repetition. And I know some of you had to endure this both yesterday and today, so I'm sorry if you know the punchline to a couple of jokes. I don't think any of them are that memorable, so they may have a chance to resonate again with you. For me, to work with a board, report to a board, and help a district that I think needs strong leadership, great communication, and building on its excellent work. Chabot in particular is, as you all probably know, very well known for its equity work. With Puente, with Umoja, there are a lot of programs across the country that have imitated and emulated those successes. I would like to see how can we scale those again further? How can we make sure that you are not only held harmless, and that students are not only held harmless in the new funding formula, but we find some way to make sure that the district does well going forward, given that the funding formula, to the best that I can understand, is set up a little bit to advantage larger districts. So I'm very, very concerned about how that would work. I have some roots in California too. My spouse was part of one of the CSUs, and she would very, very much like to return to California to be part of those again. And I was so impressed with the transferability and the transfer successes that students have between CSUs and the community colleges. And so for me also, I think part of my work in Oregon is that I'm now part of the AACC National Board. I don't want to over-acronym you. Do you all know what AACC is? It's the American Association of Community Colleges, and there are about 1,200 member colleges, almost all of the colleges in the country. There are 33 elected members of the board that represent those colleges. I'm lucky to be one of them. And so it gets me a seat at the table. I've been spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C., which these days is an interesting place to be. But at the table for discussions about Pell Grants for prisoners, Summer Pell, Department of Labor and Apprenticeship, all of those major discussions. Our leader and the CEO of AACC says, if you're not at those tables, you're on the menu. And I think it's really important, even though right now it's a tough time in Washington, D.C., I like being there and being a part of those conversations, and I would bring that national level presence too with a number of my other California colleagues with AACC to be here at Las Positas, and I think that and Chabot, and I think that would also help position the district well, given the funding formula and all of the changes happening in the community college sector.
Thank you. So if we could ask that you please give us one specific example of how your management style has helped to move an initiative forward.
My management style, and this will give me a chance to talk just a little bit generally about my approach. I hope that you can tell I like to connect to people, to relate to people, to be a good communicator, to have compassion, to make attempts at humor, and really to do all of those things as part of building great teams. And so I think that the best successes that I've had in my leadership career has been putting great teams of people together to work on an initiative and then getting out of their way. That's my view of a lot of what administration needs to do, is help leverage resources, build teams, and get people together who are the subject matter experts. One of the things that I'm now working on, and we haven't quite all the way gotten around the hurdle, but we're, I think, making some good progress, is on nursing faculty salaries. So, do we have any nursing faculty here? Couple in the back. As far away as you could get. Well, let me say, in Oregon, we've had, there's a nursing shortage, there's a nursing faculty shortage. There are great jobs in nursing that we don't have enough people that are trained for. We have had to cut our enrollment from 82 to 35 at the campus that I oversee because of the nursing faculty shortage. So what I have done is I'm on a governor's task force called Future Ready Oregon, and she's trying to help promote advancement in health careers for Oregonians. So it's my job to work with the CEOs of our local hospitals like Providence, which is the largest private employer, I think, in all of Oregon and most of the Northwest, and other of the providers to see how could they help us. We know they want to hire our nurses when they graduate. They all pass their exams. They're very well prepared. But if we don't have a seat for them, that's a real challenge. So what we're doing is trying to see whether it should be a legislative approach in which we have a tax credit for people who come into nursing education. That might be because they can often make much more money as a nurse than they can as nursing faculty. So that's really been a challenge. We're working on that. We're also analyzing how do we have a better pathway with CNAs getting able, certified nursing assistants or medical assistants, being able to advance their career in nursing and staying with us in school. And I've been part of working on this with the Nurses Union of Oregon, with the other faculty, but I'm the lead president and there are two others, and it's especially a problem in rural Oregon. Not only the salary, but then living conditions and making sure that when we draw nursing faculty that they stay. So it's I think, a problem that impacts statewide both student success and patient care. And the part that I have found to be most successful about it is, again, we have content experts around the table who are helping to solve the problem. I'm not a nurse, but I will use them. I have been a consumer of medical services. I'm also very educated about what we need to make sure that how we need to prepare nurses to work in the current medical area with a lot of very, very expensive, high-dollar programs. Each mannequin that we authorize is over $60,000. So it's insanely expensive to provide nursing education. We have to do more of it, and we have to do it better, and I'm proud to be a leader of that initiative.
Sorry.
They were hiring in Oregon.
Thank you. If you would please describe your financial management experience.
Okay, I alluded to it already, but I would like to talk some about finances in general, and also make sure that I get time to talk about our bond programs. As I mentioned, I have a large and very complex set of budgets with our state budget. We have a bunch of facilities accounts. I have been an entrepreneurial fundraiser in terms of our foundation. So I have a foundation account and a president's council where we do foundation scholarship fundraising for students in the community. I have also been able to help secure some of that high-dollar equipment, not only mannequins, but discounted dental equipment, because it's so expensive for students to be able to train on that. And we've worked with partners. They won't give it to us for free, but we've been able to get discounted equipment. So that's one of the things that I have most appreciated about working with our business partners. But overall, with a $94 million budget, it's interesting because we are in a different situation in Oregon. Enrollment is down, budgets are bad. So I know that there has been a change in the way that it's funded in California, but enrollment has looked better here. And the budgets overall, coming out of your Governor Brown, well, I guess it's a new governor now, but your Governor Brown versus our Governor Brown, there are two very, very different fiscal pictures between the states. I have led self-support programs, particularly those in English as a second language, and been able to bring students who are speakers of other languages to the US and run those on self-support budgets, been able to bring in additional resources and scholarship funds to the colleges, and also have been a leader in our bond program. So we have, and I've been looking around the facilities. I know that deferred maintenance is an issue because it's very, very expensive to maintain the buildings that we have that we got built a while ago. Some of our buildings in Oregon, and I think probably here too, are becoming vintage buildings, right? And so they need a lot of TLC. I was able to testify last year successfully at our legislature to ask for $8 million to fund one piece of, the voters were funding $28 million for a new health technology building. So we were able to testify to show exactly why we needed that $8 million match, how it would be invested, and that we would take care of the building with deferred maintenance too. So I feel really, really comfortable with fundraising, with fiscal management, and with trying to make sure too that we support, to the extent we can, faculty development.
Thank you. Finally, last question before we turn to our community for questions. If you could tell us about a time you failed and how you rebounded from that.
Okay, failure, the F word. You know, they asked me this yesterday, and I think I failed to sleep afterward because I had a hard time thinking about failure in a way that you don't mind presenting to others. So bear with me because some of you did have to hear this example yesterday. And because I know it's being videotaped, I'm keeping some details rather opaque because there were personnel situations involved. But to me, one of the most important things in a president or a chancellor, a high-level executive, has to do with who you hire and what the decisions are that you make around hiring. For me, both making sure that we have people who will meet or exceed all of the qualifications, they add diversity to our workplace, however defined, they're culturally, linguistically competent. I want all the right things in technical skills, essential skills, and soft skills in our employees. And early in my work as a vice provost, several years ago in Spokane, I came down to, and I'm sure lots of you have chaired search committees, not always do you get great pools with wonderful candidates, particularly when you do a short search and you don't pay very well. So in this way, we were trying quickly to fill up a key position in global education, and as Chief International Officer, it was tremendously important to me that we did it quickly because I needed somebody to have a time-specific set of tasks that needed to be completed. 2 finalists were brought to me from the committee. I sat with them, I met with them, I checked references on them. I worried and lost sleep because I wasn't sure that either of them really met the qualifications. But in the end, I opted to extend an offer to one of the candidates. He didn't succeed, and I failed him. It was probably never going to work well. His qualifications didn't really match what we needed, but I went forward with the hire, and it didn't serve him, it didn't serve our students, and it didn't serve me. I then had to, after about 2 years, move to a non-renewal. So I'm not afraid to do that when there has been a performance issue. But with an upper level manager, who's somebody you've relocated to the area and brought them there, pretty sure they might not succeed. I could not support him to succeed in the role and then had to move to non-renew him. So the failure in that was we should have failed the search, started over, had a new pool, and just started a little bit later with the time-sensitive work. So what I have learned, and I know our HR colleagues are somewhere in the room, I saw Jennifer earlier, I've had to fail several searches since then. I have failed 3 high-level searches at PCC, but I have also knocked it out of the park with 8 or 9 high-level searches at PCC. But what I haven't done is move forward when we didn't have the right combination of technical skills, essential skills, diversity, equity, and what I thought would best serve our students. So I now think that hiring is really one of the best things that my attributes as an executive, but it was because of that lesson when I went forward and should not have. I keep that in mind all the time because I want to make sure I serve students well, but also our employees. Thank you.
Dr. Avery, thank you very much. And we now have an opportunity to hear questions from folks who have come to the forum. And as you know, we have a wide variety of different community job descriptions here among us. So if I could ask the people, line up over on this side to facilitate our doing this and getting as many of your good questions in as we possibly can. And I am going to hold people to the 30-second rule here because it's really a matter of access to as many folks as possible who have taken the time to come and to formulate questions. If you go beyond 30 seconds, which I know is especially sometimes hard for me, feel free to laugh. Those of you who have been in meetings, should be everyone. I am going to do a sort of tap on the shoulder to remind folks. Again, I think it's an access issue. So with that said, please don't be shy. We're not shy here at Chabot College. Let's ask some questions. And it looks like we have Dr. Caballero, the president of our student center. President Caballero.
Okay, go ahead and don't be shy of, if you can do them in 30 seconds, 2-part questions. I've taught for a long time, so I think I can hopefully grab both pieces of the question. Go ahead.
I have multiple questions. Do I ask one and then wait for a response and ask the second?
Unless they're really the same question, why don't you go ahead and, what would you prefer? How we handle the multiple questions?
If you can try to marry them, that would be good. Just because I know there are going to be a lot of people wanting to ask questions.
Gotcha. Yeah. So my question is, what is your familiarity with the communities and the demographics here at Chabot, particularly within the students, and how do you identify in relation to our communities? And as a chancellor, how do you specifically intend on connecting and serving the student body?
Okay, so that is actually, that's a good one because it brings in lots of different elements of important pieces of the question. So first off, to talk about, it's interesting as I've learned more about the districts, the demographics between the 2 colleges are quite different, right? And one of the things that really jumps out to me is the ethnic diversity of the student body here being right around, certainly a majority minority college, but also roughly 80% at least students of color. And so to me, one of the things that I think is most important is making sure that we're not only serving on the front end as we bring students on with access and opportunity, but that our success metrics match that. So as Chancellor, and I had a very hard time finding some of the exit numbers, but one of the things that would be most concerning to me is making sure if we can say that roughly 80% of the student body is students of color, that's who I want to see on graduation day. I want to shake 80% of the graduates' hands as their students of color. That's not where the state's numbers are, and I don't think it's where the district's numbers are. So I'm really, really concerned about equity gaps, achievement gaps, and making sure that we offer services, particularly things like Puente and Umoja, that help make sure students have belonging, affiliation, connection, and really a deep sense of being able to connect with faculty members. And that is what we know helps students. We've had a harder time being able to show how do all of those services equate to better success rates. So I am data-minded, but I also like to connect with students individually and as humans and as people. I go to a lot of sports events when we have sporting events for our colleges and campuses. I've been in student play. Thankfully, it was a musical, so I was so happy to have a quiet, no speaking, no singing part. My family and I all were part of a stage experience where we walked onto one of the stage plays. I attend all the events that I can. I meet regularly with our student leadership. I last week held a Giving Tuesday food drive where we collected donations. Actually, it was more of a GoFundMe page. Among our 4 campuses, we try to use leverage and competition, friendly competition between the campuses to see who could raise the most money. And we raised about $15,000 for the student canteen for food bank. And the student leaders and I were part of that. So we then bantered a little bit back and forth with our colleague presidents. We had some silly pictures of ourselves on Twitter and Instagram, trying to really find ways to connect between students and administration to support a cause that everybody believes in, which is making sure we reduce student hunger. So let me stop there. If we get time, we'll come back to some of your others.
My name is Rachel Maldonado Azaminia. I'm a part-time counselor now with the Extended Opportunities Programs and Services, but I was here 29 and a half years as a counselor coordinator of EOPS care and Cal work. So my question is more around, you talked about wages and stuff like that. One of my concerns is I was helping a student about employment. And so I asked around, do we have an employment services anymore? And we don't, for as far as I know here at Chabot College. We have a transfer center, but not an employment center where we have job openings, job fairs and stuff like that. So I'm part-time, so I could be misinformed. But when I asked folks around here, I said, well, how come we don't have an employment services where people can go and look for jobs off campus or on campus, where we had job fairs? And so where do you see the importance of that kind of services, the employment services for our students who are in tech, tech programs?
Okay, I think I got your question, and I'm going to actually broaden it out from being just tech programs to also transfer students, because really, all students are here in one way or another, even if it's a student who is going to transfer, they're all eventually wanting a job. And so at our campus, we have been able to maintain, even in spite of right now, which is I think a $17 million budget cut was the last number I heard yesterday. In spite of that, we've been able to maintain job and career services. Much of their day-to-day work has been put online so that students can then get connected to online portals for job applications, but we've needed to keep that office running because we're finding that a lot of students need things that they can't just get online. Descriptions about how to apply, what a cover letter should look like, essential skills, again, related to how do you prepare for a job interview, how do you make sure that you get there and you get there in good shape, and what kind of thank you notes do you write afterward. The internet can give students some advice on that, but we find that they are much more successful when it's face-to-face and they have a follow-up appointment. We've encouraged students, Portland is nearly a full employment economy right now, which is good, but the wages are minimal. And so we are concerned about students around equity, making sure that they are finding things, particularly in the career fields, in the CTE programs. You can get a job right now in our automotive maintenance program making roughly $60,000 with an associate's degree. However, needing to know how to be at that interview, making sure that you can talk with those potential employers about what specific things that you are expert at in automotive maintenance. And again, the essential skills of coming back every day, making sure that students can pass drug tests. We have some substances that have been illegal for a while in California, in Oregon, that I know are coming online as well in California. And for our students, we want to make sure that they're able to juggle. Most of our students are working students, but they are working 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs. My goal, again, my personal goal, is to help them have 1 family wage job. But in this economy, that's a challenge.
Hi there, my name is Stephanie Contreras. I'm a part of the equity group on campus, Arts Revolutionaries for Change. I'm also co-president of Stay Well Collective. It's a short list, but it goes on. So I wanted to ask you, I know that you mentioned equity and diversity. I wanted to ask you what that means to you. But also, I wanted to ask you, for the changes that you have made, how were you able to institutionalize those changes so that it doesn't seem minuscule? I don't know if I should reiterate that in a way that makes sense, or if you sort of understand.
No, I think it makes sense, but could you tell me again the name of the group that you are working with?
Arts Revolutionaries for Change is an equity group on campus.
So let me talk about equity in general and some definitions of it, it sounds like, or like what that means to me.
Yeah, what that means to you and what
Okay.
you have done to institutionalize those equitable efforts that you might have done already or haven't yet.
Okay, and let me make sure that if I don't get everything in that, then come back to me at the end, okay? So to talk some about what equity means to me, I've addressed it a little bit because it's more than equality. To me, equity is about fairness, about opportunity, but realizing that some students bring more barriers than others, and that they're not always barriers that we can see. And that sometimes students' strengths, a second language, a third language, something, or an immigrant experience, sometimes what could be perceived as a barrier is actually a strength and a resource because they're very, very resilient because of the experiences that they've had. So a little bit about equity means to me, I want our outcomes, as I mentioned before about graduation, I want our outcomes to look like the beginning of our students. That has not been the case in community colleges in general. I was interviewed this morning for AACC, again, the American Association of Community College. They're doing a special issue on successful outreach to Asian and Pacific Islander students. I was very, very pleased that they called, and I had lots and lots to tell them because I talked about, for one, making sure that we have student practices and policies and procedures that help really everybody. Things like quitting late registration, not letting students register into the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th week of the term. You might like it as a student. We know it is very unlikely if you register that late that you will pass. So those things help all students. Ideally, they help students of color even more. But there are specific programs like, we have multicultural resource centers. We have a Jade Night Market, which is a major community event for Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander students and communities, where it's this large night market with food trucks and music and dancing. So there's a cultural sense of belonging, and it's hosted at the college and at the campus. We want students to see themselves as part of us, and that the campus and the college are a resource for them, and that they can feel at home, and that they belong. Specific programs too, like our Men of Color project, is a year-long effort where students would sign up, and we have been, and I know California's numbers are similar, it's been a real challenge to see men succeeding in higher ed. Enrollments are lower, graduation rates are lower. So we have reserved extra funds for a Men of Color project, and the men work with a faculty mentor. It's year-long. It's tuition-free because we supplement that tuition from my office. They also can receive scholarship aid if they continue to perform and do well. And they participate in an undergraduate research experience. So it's like hands-on learning. It kind of connects back to that career question. It's hands-on learning preparing students for the workplace or for transfer. We know it will never pay for itself because it's a pretty expensive program, but we have so many men leaving PCC at the end of week 1, at the end of week 2, not coming back. So even if it's just on retention, that's an investment that I will make every single time. Did I capture most of where you were going? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Avery. My name is Greg Reese, and I'm a senior member of the classified staff with 30 years of experience here at Chabot College. Welcome to Chabot. I am also a fellow Oregonian who originates from Astoria. My question is very simple. You alluded to some of your procedures to ensure that we have the best and most able within our administrative ranks during your hiring process. Can you allude any further on how you will ensure that those candidates will properly meet all the ethical and moral and professional standards that come with that selection process and those offices if they are indeed selected?
Well, I can tell you that if they don't, they will not last. I have let go. Part of the job of being an executive is to make sure that when a behavior in an employee can't be remedied, even if it's in their probation time, we need to part ways. Because if somebody can't do the basics of their job, particularly what's important to me is welcoming, kindness, compassion, and being really student service friendly. If there are employees who don't meet that and we can't somehow get them there, they don't belong, period. Now, I have been a shop steward when I was a faculty member, so I have been, I think, on both sides of the labor management table. I know California has a very, very long dedicated history of shared governance being about a real consultative model. So I view our employee groups as our partners. When I first started at PCC, I announced at my welcome speech that I would be happy to get to know particularly our classified employees better, and I wanted to spend a day where I worked a shift with them. So I've spent lots of time driving around with the campus police. I had to buy some coffees for that, and that was all right because it was coffee well spent. I learned so much from spending the day with our campus safety officers. I have spent a lot of time with our facilities and maintenance staff. I'm not very handy, so they had to make me promise not to hurt anything, but really working a shift with them to see what all is involved in the day-to-day of their job. So I feel really adept, particularly at those infrastructure positions, at making sure we make clear to employees what are the expectations, we provide the resources to help if somebody's not meeting the expectations, we give fair warning and due process, and again, the part of being the executive is, if we can't get there, it's no longer viable, and we would coach somebody out.
Thank you, Dr. Avery.
Hi, Dr. Avery. My name is Yvonne Wu Craig, and I'm the Executive Director of Institutional Advancement here at Chabot College. I oversee grants and the foundation. Through kind of the evolution of how our district has evolved, we have 3 foundations, a district foundation and one at each college. And I wanted, since you'd be working at the district, I wanted to just wonder what you see as the role of the district foundation in relation to the college foundations and how you've worked with foundations in the past and your experience with them.
Okay, it may not surprise you that this question came up yesterday as well at Las Positas. So I sense that there are some issues there. And what I had been doing lots and lots of research in advance. I really only saw the 2 college foundations and wasn't as aware, and I've been looking at it now, that there's also a district foundation. So let me speak about that and then try to make sure that I address each of those. To me, we have to have really a sense of clarity and purpose. And if you're out fundraising, we don't want you to accidentally approach the same donor that your colleague across town did, or vice versa, because it has to be very, very strategic. We have few opportunities to ask our major donors for gifts. We are mostly asking for scholarship dollars in my foundation world, and that is something I want to make a great ask and get a very high return on investment, because those are actual dollars that we can return to help students instantly with their affordability, which we know translates to better graduation rates. When we have worked with corporate partners, sometimes a district foundation might be the one that is the lead on that, but I think it really depends upon the purpose of the ask. And it's interesting that you have foundations and grant development in the same office. Other times they keep those things separate. So to me, it's really all of a piece, right? You're working on trying to provide non-state resources. I have a wealth of experience in grant writing, and I think that we can, as much as we can, leveraging the district. Okay, and that's one of the things I think that, because I speak district and I know about a lot of the different acronyms and backgrounds of being part of a district at multiple levels, Whenever possible, we should use the resources of the district to leverage and collaborate and not compete. We don't want you asking for the same amount from the same donor as Las Cositas is. We have to strategize and make sure that if you're making that ask, it's been coordinated. And it's much more likely to succeed. Because donors want to give when they have a personal connection to you, to the college, to the campus, to sometimes a specific program that they've been part of. So we want to maximize your return on investment too by making sure that you get a lot of yeses rather than some surprise no's.
Just a quick time check. We're doing good, and we have about 15 minutes left for questions. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Kay Fisher, and I teach ethnic studies here at Chabot College. And excuse me, my question for you is if you can give an example of anything that you've been involved in addressing any of the following equity concerns that are related to our student population, but perhaps a little bit outside of immediate student success rates, such as anti-immigration policies, Islamophobia, police brutality, racial profiling, military recruitment, sexual harassment, the marginalization of the LGBTQ community, housing issues, homelessness, access to health care, transportation, and healthy foods. Thank you.
That's quite a list. And so I won't cover all of them except to say, well, in general, it's much more complicated to be a college student than it was when I was in college many years ago. And as an administrator, a couple specific things, and this won't address them all, but I think it should give you an idea about my philosophy. We have been able to make strategic investments when possible, and almost everything that we do costs money. It either costs money in building, supplies, equipment, also costs human resources. We were able to install to remodel some of our existing bathrooms so that it was multi-stall, I don't think I'm gonna get this wrong, but it was available for LGBT students and trans students in particular. We then also had a little bit of an advertising campaign on campus to make sure that it was very clear which bathrooms were designated that anybody could use them, and that gender neutral. Portland has a different term for it. We have a lot of specific terms for everything, so I know, but multi-stall, any gender bathrooms. And so we have one of those now in each building. It was about $85,000 per bank of restrooms, which was more expensive than I thought it might be. But it was worth it, and students tell us that they feel honored by the college. We were able to get the city to help us with some of the code restrictions because, believe it or not, we had to get permission to do this to make people feel more welcome, which just seems outrageous. We also funded a Queer Resource Center, and I was honored to be the keynote speaker for their Pride event and talk about being LGBT myself and the progress that we've made, but also that there are still many gains that need to be made for LGBT students. Also, we are a sanctuary college in a sanctuary city. And so we have a dream center with some funding, some foundation funding so that undocumented students feel welcome, have financial support, and are connected with faculty who understand their experience. We don't want them to feel pressured by having to do the FAFSA and all of the other legal forms. We want them to focus on school. So that has been something that we were able to resource. I will say, like here, it was a bit of a controversy, but it was the right thing to do for students.
Thank you.
And I'll say, just in the interest of time, I just stuck with those examples, but there are others I would refer to if time had allowed. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Just want to start off by saying I only see about 7 students in here, and that's going to prelude to my question. What are your plans to support platforms that encourage and value student input on policy decisions that impact our education?
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean behind the question about platforms? Like, in other words, not asking you to meet at 3 o'clock in a busy week?
Precisely.
Okay, tell me more though.
Let's see. How do we get more students in here to share their voice like I'm doing right now?
I don't think that any community college has really cracked that code yet. Let me tell you about what I've done and what I think I would try to do here. For one, I mean, working with student government leaders is great, but I view it as necessary but not sufficient, because our student government leaders and we're glad to have you here, are not representative of students overall. So that's been my worry, is it's nice to have, fundraising campaigns like I did over Thanksgiving with our student leadership, but we realize that for every 5, 10 of those students who are involved deeply in student government, there are, at PCC anyway, 5,000 who come in, take the class, and go home without that affiliation and connection, and they don't feel necessarily a part of the campus experience. One of the things that I've done is try to have a pretty good technology platform. That's why I was wondering what you meant by platform, but I'm available on Twitter. I do a lot of, anytime that I'm at an event with students, I take silly selfies and put them on there. I've tried to learn Instagram. My kids are helping me with that. They don't think I'm very good yet. And also lots of Facebook, but I understand that there aren't as many kids on Facebook as there are now grandparents and dog photos. So I may have to put that one aside. And I send out a newsletter every single week. Every Friday, I talk about what happened around campus, what happened around the state, and what I was involved in my work at the national level. So like when tomorrow I'm at the State House, on Friday, students will get a report, and faculty and staff too. Who did I meet with? What did I talk about? And how did I advocate for more funding for the district? Not everybody wants that much detail, so sometimes we link things that they can click and get additional detail that they'd like. But we also have taken a number of students beyond our elected leaders with us to the State House. Tomorrow I'll be taking employer groups to show why we need to have more radiographers, dental hygienists, and nurses in Oregon, because it's a sort of health advocacy day. But in February, I'll be going with, last year was about 120 students, and they really absolutely rocked the State House. They told their own stories in their own words, and legislators were so much more happy to hear from them than from me. And that was much more rank and file students beyond those, and we were able to pay them to be able to be there. We bought lunch, and we didn't pay them, but we did lunch and a bus and a free t-shirt for going. So we wanted to make sure that students' time was honored as well. So I think those kinds of events where students can be engaged in the political process, they also learn a little bit more about civics. And some of them, hopefully, will run for election. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Avery. My name is Dmitry Kalagin. I teach business and accounting here. So I have a possibly, maybe a little bit of personal question. So what's the impetus for you to go on this job search in general? And if you want to share specifically why this position, why change jobs right now?
Okay. For me, I think this is really about the chance to serve as a chancellor of a dynamic district that's so equity-minded. That's why this position is so compelling to me. Being a president now in my 4th year, I feel like working with and reporting to a board, plus the work that I've done on the national level, would be a great fit. And I would like to make sure that I have a decade or longer to be able to exercise that privilege if I were to come here. So I really want a longer fit. I have some family who are here in the area that I would like to be closer to. I mentioned that my spouse preferred her time in California over her time in rainy Oregon. So she is certainly a proponent of this. And also, do we have baseball fans here? Okay, I'm going to go there. I'm a big Cubs fan, and I hope you don't put that on my evaluation. The Cubs play a lot of times in San Francisco, and once or twice every couple of years in Oakland. And so on the fun and leisure side of it, I also think would enjoy some of the Bay Area's sports offerings. Portland does not yet have a major league team of my favorite sport. Sorry, soccer fans, if I offended you. And basketball fans. That's it. Basketball and soccer.
All right,
Thank you, Dimitri.
Hello, thank you for being here and talking to us today, this afternoon. My name is Laura Larcon. I am one of the vice presidents for the Academic Senate here at Chabot College, and this is the question. The Academic Senate casted a Chancellor's vote of no confidence last year. I'm wondering if you are aware of the concerns expressed in that document and how does your leadership style may address the issues raised. Thank you.
Yeah, let me say I've done my research very carefully and feel like that what I would add to this mix is that I'm a strong communicator, a great collaborator, and even though I've had to spend a lot of time up here talking today, I think I'm a good listener, And I'm able to bring groups of people together to help mediate solutions to problems, because and sometimes we can't get everybody to agree. I'm going to steer clear of some of the specifics with that because I don't know the difference between what's been reported in the media and true or fake news or whatnot. I've read extensively about the situation, and I think what I would take from it is that this is a district that is going to even be greater with long-term excellent leadership at the chancellor level, who helps leverage the strengths of the colleges together, and again works to mediate problems and does that as much as possible behind closed doors. That when everybody comes out of high-level meetings, they come out in agreement for things such as we, in my mind, have to be, must be, need to be a sanctuary for our students.
Good afternoon. My name is David Betts. I work in Human Resources. I'm Director of Employment and Labor Relations. And I think my question is probably kind of a more wellness and balance question. So my question is, how do you maintain balance in terms of the work that you do on a national level with things like AHCC, various statewide meetings and conferences, then the need to be available to the college presidents and the vice chancellors, as well as meeting with students and not having people feel like you're too far away during this, or that you're not available here, or that you're too anything? How do you work on your balance?
Well, I think that in some ways these roles are set out to make you imbalanced, right? And so that is part of what's inherent in the question. To me, the chancellor's role, and I sit at the table with these 32 other presidents and chancellors from around the country, and what we talk about between meetings, you know, and after receptions, is how do you balance it all, and how do you decide to target local, state, national, regional, campus. I mean, that really is, there are more demands than you will ever be able to meet in a certain given week. I think I'm a good multitasker. I'm humble. I have high energy, and I'm really energized and invigorated by the work. I also have good home-life balance, to the extent that's possible, home-work balance. I insist that my employees take their vacation within HR appropriate language, and I take mine. Because you have to be able to rejuvenate like that if you're going to come back and run in 1,000 different directions. So and I have good teams. You know, I've built a great executive team that I would really hate to leave in Oregon. I build great teams and trust them to do their work as well, and we all pitch in and make sure. I mean, technology helps with that because you can be many more places at once. Sometimes you're not as effective as you would be if you were face-to-face, though. So I think it's, again, trying to stay humble, pace yourself, because there's going to be more work for longer than you can realize, and recognize, too, that no one person can do all of the work.
Just wanted to let you know, Dr. Avery and our community member questioners, we have just time for maybe 2 more minutes at the most.
Okay,
so
we can go lightning round.
Hi, Dr. Avery. My name is Roberto Ruiz. I'm a longtime faculty member. I think Mr. Betts and I must have been on the same wavelength in terms of our question, but let me ask you the question very quickly.
Sure. Which department are you from?
I teach business here on faculty.
Okay.
Yes. And your district office will be located in the Dublin-Livermore area, which is about 12 miles away from Chabot. How do we know here at Chabot that you will stay engaged and committed to supporting Chabot College's mission here in the Hayward area? And how accessible will you be?
Yeah, that's a huge question, because that's really what it is about, it being part of the district, right? Like, you have to make sure that you attend to both parts, you know, and it's sort of like, I have siblings, right? And everybody wants to be the favorite sibling. I know I'm the real favorite, though. But it is that balance, and leveraging time and resources. I understand that the district, for me in Portland right now, the district office is at one of the campuses. That actually makes it harder for all of the campuses to feel that they're represented. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that the district office is not at either. I know that Chabot is the older of the 2 colleges. It's what, 17% larger than LP, but at the same time, serving two very, very important distinct parts of the region. So I would look for the board's direction on that. We haven't gotten a lot of time to talk about the board today, but my goal is to be hands-on and involved and engaged with employees whenever I can, wherever I can.
Thank you.
Last one.
Hello, my name is Antonio. I'm a student at Chabot College. I'm also a student representative of student body. I'm also involved with the student government on campus. So what kind of advice do you have to offer students who are required to take 2 and 3 years of remedial math and English, which costs lots of time and money, whether or not they are ESL students, especially while keeping in mind we have new bills like AB 705, which are being established, and also do you see any faults with bills like AB 705?
Okay, I'm going to just say first up, and I know we're almost at time. I want to be careful how I say this, but to me, we have got to find a way, community college sector-wide, to limit the number of remedial developmental education courses we're subjecting students to. There are ways around this and through it, multiple measures placement, self-report, self-placement using high school GPA. There are a whole host of other ways to do this rather than making somebody earn seat time sequentially, burn through their Pell, not make it to graduation on time, and really having opportunity costs when they could be already out working. So we're not serving students well. If that, to me, that's gatekeeping. That's not necessarily, sometimes it's about our own enrollments rather than about student successes. Now, that said, I hope I haven't offended broad swaths of the college community who teach in those areas, because I know that they're doing their very best with students who have sometimes major challenges. But to me, we have to fix the placement process so that we're not subjecting you to that.
Thank you, excellent questions. So if I could ask you to briefly kind of summarize for us with a closing statement, and then I have a little bit of business to talk about with the group.
Okay, do I have a couple minutes left or only barely? Okay, well luckily I'm a quick talker. I'm not sure I have any words left that I haven't used, but I've enjoyed the chance to be able to connect with you. I didn't get to everybody's questions, but I am so intrigued and interested in this position, in the work of the Chancellor here. I'm impressed by Chabot in particular and its well-renowned equity work, and I would love to be a part of helping to advance that and making sure, we didn't get a chance to talk a lot about sustainability, but in Oregon that's a word we discuss and describe a lot. I know you all have had some climate issues here recently with fires and smoke, and when I think about sustainability, I not only think about it with our climate, which is huge, but also about our financial resources and about making sure that we position these colleges to better serve students not only next year or the year after, but 10 or 20 years down the road. When I look at some of California's data, that's something related to the new performance-based funding. I think I could add a lot to that. I could use my spreadsheet wizardry, my history of teaching statistics, and I think strong advocacy in the State House to try to make sure that we have a sustainable financial future, and I think that that would benefit students and the service areas for both colleges as well. So thank you for your time, your question, and your attention.
So just, I want to formally thank Dr. Avery again for her interest in our district and for coming and sharing with us. Thank you so much. Much appreciation. Just a couple of final words about this forum. We have monitors who are positioned around the room to collect your comments. If you would like to take a little bit of time to write those down. If you don't feel comfortable or have a sense you'd rather do it online, please go to the district website where the form is easily accessible online. I would ask that people do that by the end of the day, if possible. Yeah, because those will be important to our trustees. So once again, thank you, and thank you to Dr. Avery. Safe travel.